Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum, dear students. Today we are going to start with a new chapter of renal physiology. This is a very important chapter. In this chapter, we are going to discuss how urine concentration varies with the extracellular fluid osmolarity, how concentrated and dilute urines can be formed under different conditions, and what are the conditions which control the concentration of urine formation. So, let us begin. So what you need to understand is that your kidney has an ability to produce either very dilute urine or very concentrated urine depending upon the need of your body. So what determines the concentration of urine is actually the concentration of your extracellular fluid. Now let me explain this point. Suppose there is a person who has had a large drink with a lot of water in it, and suppose he has had around 7 to 8 glasses of water. Now his blood is going to be hypoosmolar. What does hypoosmolarity means? It means that there are large quantities of water in the blood and very little solutes as compared to the volume of water. So this large quantity of water has diluted his solutes to such an extent that now his extracellular fluid is hypoosmolar. So to bring back the osmolarity of the extracellular fluid towards the normal, what the kidneys need to do is remove a lot of water in the form of urine and try to conserve the solutes and try to maintain the solutes within the extracellular fluid so the osmolarity can raise towards नॉर्मल. तो ऐसा इंसान जिसका वाटर इनटेक बहुत ज़्यादा है, उसका एक्स्ट्रा सेलुलर फ्लूइड के सॉल्यूट्स डाइल्यूट हो जाते हैं. देयर इज़ लार्ज वॉल्यूम ऑफ एक्स्ट्रा सेलुलर फ्लूइड विद डाइल्यूटेड solutes. So in such a person, the urine which is going to be produced is going to be in very large volumes, which means that the urine will be in large volumes, and the concentration of this urine is going to be very low. It is going to be containing very small quantities of solute, because most of the solutes are reabsorbed so that the osmolarity of the extracellular fluid can be raised. So in such person, the urine which is going to be produced is going to be dilute and in large quantities. It is going to be so dilute, and your kidneys are able to reduce the osmolarity of the urine to a minimum of 50 milliosmoles per liter. So this is the reason when you take a lot of fluid, especially in winters when there is no sweating and your extracellular fluid becomes hypoosmolar, your body produces large quantities of urine which are not very concentrated. In fact, they are very dilute, and you can see that the color of the urine is transparent and almost water-like because it contains very little solutes. On the other hand, if a person is dehydrated, suppose a person who is lost in a desert, his body is now trying to conserve the water. And what is the condition of such a person? What is the condition of the extracellular fluid of such a person? A person who has been severely dehydrated is going to have very little fluid in his extracellular fluid, and the solutes which are present in his extracellular fluid are going to be concentrated. Such a person will have hyperosmolar extracellular fluid, and the osmolarity of his extracellular fluid is going to be very high. Now what we need to do is bring back the osmolarity of the extracellular fluid of this person. So the kidneys are going to conserve water and excrete very little amount of water, but they are going to excrete large quantities of solutes in this small quantity of water, so that the osmolarity of the extracellular fluid can be reduced back towards normal. So the urine produced in such a person is going to be in very small volumes, but it is going to be hyperosmolar with a lot of solute present in the urine. and your kidneys have an ability to concentrate the urine in dehydration to as high as 1200 to 1400 milliosmoles per liter. Your body can remove around 1200 to 1400 milliosmoles of waste in 1 liter of urine. So in such person, the urine is going to be in very small volume, but it is going to be highly concentrated, and you can normally see this when you are dehydrated, especially in summers because of a lot of sweating, and if you are fasting and you haven't had any water, the urine which your kidneys are going to be going to produce is going to be in very small quantities, but it is going to be very dark because of a lot of solutes present in it. So I hope you understood the basic concept of how the extracellular fluid osmolarity controls the osmolarity of urine. Now let us discuss the mechanism for excretion of dilute urine. So suppose a person who has had around 8 to 10 glasses of water, his extracellular fluid osmolarity is going to decrease. What does this mean? This means that there is going to be large quantities of water in his extracellular fluid, and this water is going to dilute his solutes. Now this decreased extracellular fluid osmolarity is going to result in decreased secretion of ADH from the posterior pituitary. Now let us understand basically what is ADH and how it is secreted from the posterior pituitary. ADH is a hormone which is produced in your hypothalamus, and from your hypothalamus it is secreted towards your pituitary, and where it is stored in your posterior pituitary until it is released. So your ADH, what it does is it acts on your nephrons, especially on your distal convoluted tubule and collecting ducts and collecting tubules, and from here it causes reabsorption of water, so that very little water is excreted in the form of urine. As the name already indicates, anti-diuretic hormone, it does not allow diuresis or large volumes of urine. So what causes the secretion and formation of ADH from the hypothalamus is actually the osmoreceptors which are present in your hypothalamus. Osmoreceptors are special receptors which detect the osmolarity of your extracellular fluid. Whenever your extracellular fluid is hyperosmolar and has a lot of solutes, ADH is secreted from your hypothalamus, and it is stored in the pituitary, and from pituitary it is secreted into the blood, and from blood it goes to the nephron and causes reabsorption of large quantities of water, so that water can be maintained in the extracellular fluid and the osmolarity of the fluid can be reduced back towards normal. But when the extracellular fluid osmolarity is very low, such as in this present case, when there is a lot of water in your fluid and very little solutes, the osmoreceptors are going to send signals to the hypothalamus, and they are going to inhibit the formation of ADH and inhibit the secretion of ADH. So no ADH is going to be formed by the hypothalamus, and neither is it going to be secreted from the pituitary. So whenever there is decreased osmolarity, the secretion of ADH from the posterior pituitary is decreased, and this is going to result in decreased reabsorption of water from the distal parts of the nephron, and this water is going to be lost in the form of urine. Now more water is going to be excreted in the urine, which is going to cause the osmolarity of your extracellular fluids to increase back towards normal. So this is how dilute urine is produced whenever your extracellular fluid osmolarity is decreased because of large quantities of water in your extracellular fluid, which is going to result in a dilute urine formation with a lot of water and very little solutes, and this is thanks to the inhibition of ADH from the posterior pituitary. So I hope you understood this concept. Let's move on. So let us now move on to a very important topic, how concentrated urine is formed within your kidneys. Suppose there is a person who has been lost in the desert for a day. He has not had any water to drink and has been sweating profusely. So what kind of urine is this person going to produce? First of all, you might ask that if this person is so dehydrated, why is he even passing urine? He should not pass urine. But this is not possible. You must remember that your body has to pass urine to remove the waste products which are being produced by your body daily. Since there is metabolism going on in your body, there are going to be definitely some waste products which are being formed. So daily your body produces around 600 milliosmoles of waste products which have to be absolutely removed from your body in any case, and definitely to remove these waste products from your body, your kidney has to produce some quantity of urine. So your body is now going to try to conserve water and throw out as many solutes as it can and produce large quantities of concentrated urine. So there are some requirements for excretion of concentrated urine. Is very important topic, and it is often asked of you in your written exams and in your viva exams, so please pay special attention. What are the requirements for production of concentrated urine? So first of all, to produce concentrated urine, your body must have large quantities of antidiuretic hormone. So this is the hormone which is responsible for producing concentrated urine. On the other hand, your kidneys must have hyperosmolar renal interstitium. What does this mean? This means that the interstitium of your kidneys must have large quantities of solutes accumulated in them. So how can this be achieved? This can be achieved by a mechanism known as counter current multiplier, and also urea plays a small role in concentration of your renal interstitium, and this cycle is known as urea recycling. So there are two mechanisms by which your interstitium of the kidney can be made hyperosmolar. The first mechanism is counter current multiplier, and the second mechanism is urea recycling. So these are the two mechanisms which make your renal interstitium hyperosmolar, but there needs to be a mechanism which maintains this hyperosmolarity once it is formed. So for the maintenance of hyperosmolarity of renal interstitium, there is a mechanism which is known as counter current exchange mechanism. So do not confuse it with counter current multiplier, which is responsible for formation of hyperosmolar renal interstitium. Counter current exchange is only responsible for maintenance of this hyperosmolarity. Let me again repeat this because this is very important. Whenever you are asked a question that describe the formation of concentrated urine, first you are going to mention that the requirements for formation of concentrated urine are first large quantities of ADH in your blood and hyperosmolarity in your renal interstitium. So hyperosmolarity in your renal interstitium is caused because of counter current multiplier mechanism and because of urea recycling. Once these two mechanisms form hyperosmolar renal interstitium, it is maintained by counter current exchange mechanism. Please do not confuse both of these. Now we are going to discuss the counter current multiplier, urea recycling and counter current exchange mechanisms in detail. So you have to mention all of this when you are asked about formation of concentrated urine. So let us now discuss some factors which help in formation of concentrated renal medulla. So the greatest contributor of all is basically the sodium potassium chloride pump, which is present in the thick loop of Henle. So if you remember, suppose if this is your kidney and there are present around 2 million nephrons in each of your kidney, suppose one nephron, let us study the structure of one nephron. If you remember, the ascending thick limb of the nephron contained a special transporter which is known as sodium potassium 2 chloride transporter. It was responsible for carrying sodium, potassium and 2 chloride ions from the lumen into the interstitium. Now this co-transporter is a major contributor in forming a hyperosmolar renal interstitium. What it does is it carries sodium, potassium and chloride ions from the lumen of the nephron and throws them into the renal medulla or renal medullary interstitium, and this causes hyperosmolarity in the renal medulla. Second important contributor is the active transport of ions from other parts of the nephron, especially the collecting ducts. So not only is your ascending loop of Henle involved in throwing ions from the lumen into the renal interstitium and causing hyperosmolarity, there is also involvement of distal convoluted tubule and proximal convoluted tubule and especially your collecting ducts in carrying solutes from the lumen of the nephron towards the medullary interstitium and causing large quantities of solutes to be accumulated in the renal interstitium and causing hyperosmolarity in the renal medulla. Then another important contributor is urea, which is diffused from the end parts of your medullary collecting ducts into the renal interstitium. So large quantities of urea diffuse into the renal interstitium and cause hyperosmolarity of the renal medulla. Third important factor is reduced diffusion of water from the nephron into the interstitium. So once when the ascending thick limb and the convoluted tubules and the collecting ducts have thrown a lot of solute in the interstitium and made it hyperosmolar, we do not want large quantities of water to enter the interstitium and make it dilute again. So this is gained by reduced diffusion of water from the nephron into the interstitium. You already know that your ascending limb of loop of Henle is impermeable to water, and so is your early distal convoluted tubule. I have already mentioned it before that your thin ascending limb, your thick ascending limb and the earlier part of your distal convoluted tubule are impermeable to water no matter what, and no water is going to be reabsorbed from the nephron into the interstitium. And your late distal convoluted tubule and your collecting tubules and ducts are impermeable to water when there is no ADH present. So no water is going to enter from your ascending loop of Henle and from your convoluted proximal portion of your distal convoluted tubule into the interstitium, and this is going to help in maintaining the osmolarity of your renal medulla. So let me repeat, how is your renal interstitium made hyperosmolar? First of all, there is present a sodium potassium 2 chloride transporter which carries sodium potassium and chloride from the nephron into the interstitium. Then there is reabsorption of ions from the collecting tubules. There is reabsorption of urea from the collecting tubules into the renal interstitium, and there is very little water moving from the nephron into the interstitium. All of these factors result in large quantities of solute to be accumulated in the renal medulla and renal interstitium, and this is going to help in formation of concentrated urine. So let us now dive into a very important and interesting topic, which is known as the counter current multiplier, which is responsible for formation of hyperosmolar renal interstitium. So before we start, you need to remember some basic facts which are going to help you in better understanding of this mechanism. So the first fact that you need to remember is that the part of your nephron which is actually responsible for hyperosmolarity of your renal interstitium is your thick ascending limb, and this part is responsible for pumping out ions from the nephron into the renal interstitium and making it hyperosmolar. It pumps out sodium, potassium and chloride ions and makes your renal interstitium hyperosmolar. Now secondly, you must remember that the ability of your transporter present in the thick ascending limb to concentrate your interstitium is around 200 milliosmoles. That means it can only produce a gradient of 200 milliosmoles between the nephron and between the renal medulla. What does this mean? This means that it is going to throw out ions and solutes from the nephron into the renal medulla until there is a difference of 200 milliosmoles between the renal medulla and between the nephron. Let me explain. Suppose the initial osmolarity between the renal medulla and the nephron is 300 milliosmol. Both of them are at 300 milliosmoles. Now the sodium potassium 2 chloride transporter is going to pump sodium, potassium and chloride into the interstitium until there is a difference of 200 milliosmoles between the renal medulla and the nephron. So it is going to pump around 100 milliosmoles of ions from the nephron into the renal interstitium until your medullary interstitium becomes 400 milliosmole, and this reduces to 200 milliosmole. Now you can see there is a difference of 200 milliosmoles between the interstitium and the nephron. Now your transporter is going to stop working. It cannot produce a further gradient or a greater gradient than 200 milliosmoles. I hope you understood this point. This means कि आपका नेफ्रॉन जो है वो आपके इंटरस्टिशियम में सिर्फ 200 मिलीऑस्मोल का ग्रेडियंट प्रोड्यूस कर सकता है. वो तब तक सॉल्यूट्स थ्रो करेगा फ्रॉम द नेफ्रॉन इनटू द रीनल इंटरस्टिशियम जब तक के दोनों के दरमियान में 200 मिलीऑस्मोल का डिफरेंस ना आ जाए. अगर इनिशियली दोनों 300 मिलीऑस्मोल्स पर थे तो ये तब तक सॉल्यूट्स बाहर फेंकता रहेगा जब तक के दोनों में 200 मिलीऑस्मोल का डिफरेंस ना आ जाए. तो जब ये 100 मिलीऑस्मोल्स नेफ्रॉन से इंटरस्टिशियम में फेंकेगा तो अब इंटरस्टिशियम की कंसंट्रेशन 400 मिलीऑस्मोल हो जाएगा और नेफ्रॉन का रिड्यूस होकर 200 मिलीऑस्मोल हो जाएगा. और अब आप देख सकते हैं कि इन दोनों के दरमियान में 200 मिलीऑस्मोल का डिफरेंस आ गया है. तो अब ट्रांसपोर्टर और ज़्यादा आइंस बाहर नहीं फेंक सकता. सो यू हैव टू रिमेंबर दैट अ ट्रांसपोर्टर कैन ओनली प्रोड्यूस अ ग्रेडियंट ऑफ 200 मिलीऑस्मोल्स एंड नॉट ग्रेटर देन दैट, एंड इट स्टॉप्स वर्किंग when there is a difference of 200 milliosmoles between the nephron and the renal medulla. Thirdly, you have to remember that this part of the nephron is impermeable to water. Water cannot move out from the thick ascending limb into the renal interstitium. And this part is only permeable to solutes, and only solutes can move out from the thick ascending limb and water cannot move out from the thick ascending limb. And third most important point you have to remember is that the descending limb of the loop of Henle is impermeable to solutes and only permeable to water. It is going to lose water until its concentration becomes equal to the concentration of renal interstitium. So at the cost of repeating myself, let me tell you the three important points you must remember. First, that your thick ascending limb is responsible for forming the hyperosmolarity of your renal medulla. Secondly, it can only form a gradient of 200 milliosmoles, which means there can only be a difference of maximum 200 milliosmoles between your renal medulla and your renal nephron, and after that your transporters cannot transport any more solutes. Thirdly, thick ascending limb is impermeable to water, and fourthly and most importantly, your descending limb is impermeable to solutes. It cannot throw out any ions into the medulla, but it is highly permeable to water, and it is going to lose water until its concentration becomes equal to the concentration of renal medulla. So let us now begin with the counter current multiplier. We are going to study it step by step, and here is a figure from Guyton which shows how concentrated urine is formed. Let us study it step by step. So let us begin with the first step. So imagine that here you have your Bowman's capsule and you have your glomerulus over here, and a lot of fluid is being filtered from your glomerulus into the Bowman's capsule. So the filtrate which enters the Bowman's capsule and the proximal convoluted tubules has an osmolarity equal to the osmolarity of your plasma, which is 300 milliosmoles per liter. So remember that when filtrate reaches your loop of Henle, it has the osmolarity of 300 milliosmoles, and at this time the osmolarity of your interstitium is also 300 milliosmol. So your nephron and your renal medulla have same osmolarity of 300 milliosmol. Now, how is the concentration mechanism going to begin? As you already know that your thick ascending loop has a sodium potassium 2 chloride transporter. It is going to pump sodium, potassium and chloride from the nephron into the interstitium till it creates a gradient of 200 milliosmol, till it creates a difference of 200 milliosmoles. So everything was 300 in the medulla and in the interstitium and your in the nephron, and your nephron starts to pump out solutes from the nephron into the interstitium. It is going to pump solutes till there is a difference of 200. So when it pumps out 100 milliosmoles, your renal medullary interstitium is going to become 400, and your nephron is going to reduce its osmolarity from 300 to 200 because it pumped out 100 milliosmol into the renal interstitium. Now you can see there is a difference of 200 milliosmoles between the nephron and the renal interstitium. Now your transporter cannot pump out any more ions from the nephron into the renal tubule. ठीक है. So let me explain that suppose जब सब कुछ 300 था, like in the first step, your ascending limb is going to pump out sodium, potassium and chloride from the nephron into the renal medulla until there is a difference of 200 milliosmoles between the nephron and the renal interstitium. And how is that going to happen? When your thick ascending limb pumps out 100 milliosmol into the interstitium, the osmolarity of the interstitium is going to rise to 400 milliosmol, and the osmolarity of the nephron is going to fall to 200 milliosmol. Now you can see there is a difference of 200 milliosmol between these two parts. No further ions are going to move. So this is the second step, as you can see over here. Now, as I mentioned before, that your descending loop of Henle is impermeable to water, so impermeable to solutes. It cannot pump out any solutes into the interstitium, but it is highly permeable to water, and it is going to lose its water until its osmolarity becomes equal to the interstitium. And as you already know that the thick ascending limb increased the osmolarity of the interstitium to 400, so your descending limb is going to lose water and increase its osmolarity from 300 to 400 milliosmoles. So let me repeat that after your ascending limb created a gradient of 200 milliosmoles and increased the renal medullary interstitial osmolarity from 300 to 400, the fluid which is present in your descending limb of loop of Henle is going to leave the loop until it gains the concentration equal to the renal medullary interstitium. You know कि यहाँ पर पहले 300 milliosmol osmolarity थी, लेकिन it is going to lose its fluid until it becomes equal to the osmolarity of the renal medulla. Now what is going to happen is there is going to be further filtration of fluid from the glomerulus into the Bowman's capsule, and new fresh filtrate is going to enter the nephron. This new fluid is going to have the osmolarity of 300 milliosmoles, equal to the osmolarity of plasma. This new fluid is going to push the column of filtrate in the nephron towards the distal parts of the nephron. So now the fluid which was present in the descending limb of loop of Henle is going to be pushed further towards the ascending limb of loop of Henle. So now when this fluid reaches the ascending thick limb, the transporter which is present in the ascending thick limb is going to pump out solutes from the nephron into the interstitium. So let us move back to the previous slide and see that the interstitium had an osmolarity of 400 milliosmol, and the fluid within the nephron had the osmolarity of 400 milliosmol in some parts and 200 milliosmoles in other parts. So now again the transporters present in the ascending limb of loop of Henle are going to act on this new column of fluid and pump out solutes until there is a gradient of 200 milliosmoles present between the nephron and the renal interstitium. Let us begin with this part over here. We can see that the osmolarity of the interstitium in the nephron and in the medulla is equal and around 400 milliosmol. So can you guess how much solute is going to be pumped out from the nephron into the renal medullary interstitium to create a difference of 200 milliosmol between both of these parts? So if the nephron pumps out 100 milliosmoles, this is going to result in 500 milliosmoles in the renal medulla and 300 milliosmoles within the nephron. So here you can see there is a difference of 200 milliosmoles between the renal filtrate or the fluid present in the nephron and in the interstitium. But here you can see no fluid needs to be transported, no ions need to be transported, because there is already a difference of 200 milliosmoles, while in the top part of the renal medulla there is a difference of only 100 milliosmoles between the nephron and between the renal medullary interstitium. So there more solutes can be pumped from the nephron into the interstitium. So when the last part of the ascending limb pumps out 50 milliosmoles from the nephron into the medullary interstitium, it is going to result in a difference of 200 milliosmoles, because this is going to become 150 and this is going to become 350 and now you can see there is a difference of 200 milliosmoles between these two parts, and no further transport of ions is going to take place, and this is going to result in a picture somewhat like this. So by the end of your step number 5, the new column of fluid has been treated with the sodium potassium 2 chloride transporter, and solute has been pumped from the fluid into the interstitium, and now your interstitium is even more hyperosmolar. It has been increased from 400 to 500 milliosmol in the deeper portions, and from 300 milliosmoles to 350 milliosmoles in the shallower portions or portions away from the loop of Henle. So as you can see that the osmolarity of the interstitium increases as we move from the cortex towards the medulla of the renal interstitium. Here you can see it is 350, and as you move downwards it increases to 500 milliosmol. So for the next step, what is going to happen, that the descending limb of loop of Henle, which is impermeable to solutes but permeable to water, is going to lose its water and is going to make its concentration equal to the concentration of renal medulla, which was generated by the thick ascending limb. So your descending loop of Henle is going to lose water, and it is going to increase its osmolarity equal to the osmolarity of the renal medullary interstitium. So can you see a pattern over here? The pattern is that when the fluid enters the nephron, your thick ascending limb creates a gradient in the renal medulla, and by pumping solutes from the nephron into the renal interstitium, and your thin descending limb loses water and copies the osmolarity of the interstitium and becomes equal to the medullary interstitium in its osmolarity. Let me repeat कि यहाँ पर क्या पैटर्न है कि जब भी फ्लूइड नेफ्रॉन के अंदर आएगा, थिक असेंडिंग लिम्ब जो है वो सॉल्यूट्स को पंप आउट करेगा फ्रॉम द नेफ्रॉन इनटू द रीनल मेडलरी इंटरस्टिशियम, यहाँ तक कि नेफ्रॉन और रीनल मेडलरी इंटरस्टिशियम के दरमियान में 200 मिली ऑस्मोल्स का डिफरेंस आ जाए, और जो डिसेंडिंग लिम्ब है इट इज़ गोइंग टू लूज वाटर एंड इट इज़ गोइंग टू कॉपी द osmolarity of the medullary interstitium which was created by the thick ascending limb. So this is going to repeat again and again. What is going to happen, that these steps are going to repeat until the osmolarity in your medullary interstitium rises. It may rise to as high as 1200 milliosmol or to 1400 milliosmol, and this is how your renal medullary interstitium is converted into hyperosmolar interstitium. So let us look at this figure and revise this very important mechanism. What happens is, the fluid which enters the nephron has an initial osmolarity of 300 milliosmoles, and at this time the osmolarity of your medulla is also 300 milliosmoles. Now the thick ascending limb is going to pump out ions from the nephron into the renal interstitium till there is a difference of 200 milliosmoles between the two, and in the next step your descending limb is going to lose water and it is going to equate its osmolarity equal to that of the interstitium. So the pattern is that the thick ascending limb forms a hyperosmolar interstitium, and your descending limb follows it by losing water and copying the exact osmolarity of the interstitium. So what happens next is, new filtrate is going to enter, because there is always filtration taking place at the Bowman's capsule, and new fluid which is filtered again has the osmolarity of 300 milliosmoles. This new column of fluid is going to push fluid from the descending limb towards the ascending limb. the new fluid which is going to reach the ascending limb is again going to be treated by the sodium potassium 2 chloride transporter. It is going to pump ions from the nephron into the interstitium till there is a difference of 200 milliosmoles. Again the descending limb is going to lose water until its osmolarity becomes equal to the renal medulla. These steps are created, and as you can see, with every step there is increase in the renal medullary interstitium osmolarity. First it was 300 milliosmoles, then it became 400 milliosmoles, then it increased to 500 milliosmoles, and this is repeated till the osmolarity of your renal medulla increases to around 1200 to 1400 milliosmoles. And you can see that it is in the form of a gradient, that as you move down from the cortex towards the medulla, your hyperosmolarity increases. As you can see that in the cortical region it is around 300, as you move downward it increases to 700, then 1000 to 1200, and it can even increase to 1400 milliosmoles. So this is how your counter current multiplier mechanism causes your renal medulla to become hyperosmolar, and it is known as counter current because there is counter movement of fluid. There is downward movement of fluid in the descending limb and upward movement of fluid in the ascending limb, and they are opposite to each other. That is why it is known as counter current multiplier, and it is called multiplier because it is multiplying the osmolarity of the renal medulla.